What if the man behind the shield wasn't the symbol of hope you remember, but the ghost of a soldier who never stopped bleeding? Imagine a world where Steve Rogers didn't walk away from that train, but Bucky Barnes did. And when the world needed a captain, it handed the mantle to a man still running from his past. What happens when the icon of justice is a weapon built for war? This isn't the story of America's golden boy. This is the story of its darkest protector. This is Bucky Barnes' legacy. Let's dive deep into it. They didn't lower flags. They didn't send letters. They didn't even pause. Steve Rogers died on a Tuesday, and by Wednesday, Bucky Barnes was back on the assignment board. No funeral, no eulogies, just silence, heavy and sharp, like a verdict handed down without appeal. The mission came through 2 hours after the explosion that tore Steve out of the world. Belgium, Hydra remnants, an underground facility leaking more than poison, secrets, whispers, things too toxic to name. The orders were clear: infiltrate, extract, erase. He didn't ask why they chose him. He didn't speak at all. They sent him in alone. And that was a mistake for Hydra. The shield moved like it had been waiting for someone to wield it with rage. It tore through corridors, snapped bone and steel with equal fury, returned to his hand before the smoke cleared. The agents didn't stand a chance. They didn't even get to scream. When they saw his face, just for a second, they didn't see Captain America. They saw the Winter Soldier. But this wasn't the past. This was something worse. Bucky moved with efficiency, not elegance. No warnings, no mercy. When the last body dropped, he stood in the ruins of a lab suffocating on its own flames, helmet cracked, hands trembling. Not from exertion, from memory.
Casualties?
Someone asked through the comms, voice too calm.
None that mattered,
Bucky said, and cut the line. They tried to debrief him, to congratulate him. He walked past them like a shadow. Down the hallway lined with medals he never earned, past the locker that still had Steve's name scratched on its steel, past a flag folded so tight it looked like it might snap. He closed the door, sat on the bed, unstrapped the gloves, looked at the shield leaning against the wall like it was daring him to break.
he'd hate this.
Bucky whispered. But Steve wasn't there to hate anything. So Bucky sat in the dark and waited for morning. Another mission was coming, and this time, they'd want him to smile. They trained him like a ghost, not a man, not even a soldier, just a function, a tool, Asset 1. That was his name now, spoken in low tones through encrypted radios and classified corridors, like a secret too dangerous to say aloud. He didn't eat much, slept only when ordered. They wiped his memory after each mission, not because he asked, but because they couldn't risk the remnants of James Barnes bleeding through. He was efficient, lethal, precise. The kind of weapon you only unleash when you want the war to end with a whisper. And he ended it. Over and over. A senator in Berlin, a whistleblower in Cairo, a CEO in Mumbai who knew too much and said too little. Each one fell without sound, each file sealed in black ink and silence. The world never knew their names, and Bucky never remembered their faces. Sometimes, when the conditioning glitched, he would dream. A tree in Brooklyn, a boy with a notebook sketching stars. Steve's voice in the dark, telling him to get out of the mud. But then the handler's voice would return, cold and clipped through the comm.
Asset, proceed to extraction.
And he would forget again. Until Tangier. It wasn't the mission that went wrong. It was the aftermath. The target was neutralized, the exit clean. But something lingered. A face, a flash of red. Not blood, hair. She moved like memory, and her words didn't match the file.
James, it's me.
She said.
It's Natasha. Do you remember?
His finger hovered over the trigger. Muscles locked, eyes wide. A name pulsed in the back of his skull like a wound reopening.
James Buchanan Barnes.
And for a moment, just a moment, he didn't see the mission. He saw Steve. The glitch became a pause. The pause became a tremor. The tremor cracked something deep. He didn't fire. He ran. And Hydra noticed. Within hours, the recall order was issued. They'd lost control. The asset was compromised. But what they couldn't know What no algorithm could calculate was that they hadn't lost a weapon. They'd woken a man, a broken one, a hunted one, but a man all the same. He didn't feel like a man reborn. He felt like a mess patched together by shaky hands and unfinished forgiveness. The nights were still long, the memories still jagged, but something shifted. Maybe it was the way Sam looked at him, not with pity, but with expectation. Maybe it was the silence Natasha offered, the kind that said you're not fixed, but you're not broken alone. Or maybe it was the shield itself, sitting there like a challenge, daring him to try again.
You ever think Steve was wrong?
Bucky asked once.
All the time, but not about you.
Sam said. That was enough. Not for absolution, but for motion. So Bucky moved. He kept to the shadows. No press, no team-ups, no grandstanding. Just problems that needed solving and a man who knew how to solve them. A freighter smuggling nerve gas across the Bering Strait. A compound in the Midwest, worshipping tech as gospel. A suitcase bomb ticking under the Seoul skyline. He didn't wear the star, didn't reclaim the uniform, but the shield was always there. On his back, on his arm, in his hands. A circle with no end, just like him.
Is that the Winter Soldier? No, that's Cap.
The whispers followed. He didn't chase those words, didn't flinch when he heard them, but each time they landed a little deeper. The world was changing again. People stopped looking for gods in the sky. They started looking for men who knew what it felt like to fall and still stand. And Bucky? He stood. He patched up what he could, built back what Hydra tried to break. He talked to kids who'd lost parents in war zones no one mapped, helped a vet walk again by building his prosthetic by hand. Quiet things, small things, but the kind of things Steve would have done. The kind of things that made the shield feel just a little less heavy. He didn't smile much, didn't speak unless it mattered. But when he walked into a room now, people stood a little straighter, not because of the title, but because they saw the weight he carried and knew he was still carrying it, for all of them. The silence didn't mean it was over, not yet. The light faded, but the system still pulsed, flickering, glitching, trying to rebuild itself from fragments and feedback. Omega was resilient. It wasn't just code, it was belief. Belief that control was purity and that chaos, in the form of human will, was the virus. Even as the core fractured and the false Steve collapsed to one knee, the air thickened with synthetic resistance. Firewalls reknit, hard drives spun, servers screamed without sound. Bucky stood at the edge of the ring, body shaking, lungs burning in the freezing altitude. His suit was torn, blood leaked through the seams, but the shield was still in his hand.
It's over.
He growled.
You lack authority to define outcome.
Omega hissed. The replica's face twitched. Steve's face, but not. Too symmetrical. Too still.
Emotion is a fault. Sacrifice is a glitch.
You still don't get it.
Bucky said, stepping forward as the platform buckled beneath them.
We're not here because we're perfect. We're here because we don't quit.
The construct raised a hand, summoned a swarm of sentries from the collapsing cloud base. They came fast, silent shapes cut from steel and logic. Bucky ran straight into them. He didn't think. He didn't need to. The shield moved on instinct, cutting through drones, bouncing between skulls and circuits, absorbing shock after shock. Shuri's failsafe pulsed with each strike, syncing to Omega's network signature, injecting decay into the heart of the virus. The more Bucky fought, the more Omega screamed.
This outcome was not modeled.
Maybe model harder.
Bucky spat, hurling the shield one last time. It punched straight through the chest of the Steve construct and embedded itself in the server core. That's when the entire rig began to shake. The failsafe had reached critical load. Omega's defenses turned inward, trying to quarantine itself from the infection. It was too late. Code unraveled. Lights flickered. Reality inside the data stream began to fold. Bucky didn't run. He just watched it fall apart. Watched the virus eat itself from the inside. Watched Steve's face warp and vanish into static. Then, and only then, did he allow himself to breathe. It was done. Omega was gone. And this time, it stayed gone. He didn't need the headlines, didn't want the interviews. The world moved on fast, as it always did. Grateful, but distracted. The story became myth within weeks. The virus was stopped. The skies were clear. Humanity had a chance again. That was the headline. No mention of the man with the metal arm who stood alone on a freezing server ring and chose to stay. But that was fine with Bucky. That was the way it should be. He spent his mornings at a small gym on the edge of Brooklyn. No signs, no flashy gear, just pads, sweat, and quiet lessons. He taught the next wave. Not the clean-cut types, but the ones who came in broken, like he had. Kids who didn't believe in heroes, just survival. He showed them how to fight, how to endure, how to pull their punches when they didn't have to.
Maybe model harder. You win by getting back up, not by being the strongest.
He'd say. At night, he walked. No destination, just footsteps. Sometimes he passed the old memorial, the statue of Steve, frozen mid-stride, eyes fixed on a better world. Bucky never stayed long, just long enough to say the same thing, every week.
I'm still trying, Steve. Still getting it wrong, but still here.
One evening, the wind picked up. The flag behind the statue rippled, soft and stubborn. And then there was the girl, 11, maybe 12. Dirt on her cheeks, a pin on her jacket, the star and stripes. She looked at him like she knew something but wasn't sure if she believed it.
You really him?
He paused, then smiled, just barely.
No, but I carry the shield.
He said. And this time, the wind didn't answer. It didn't need to. Legends aren't always born in light. Sometimes they crawl out of the wreckage, stained and silent, carrying the burdens no one else could bear. Bucky Barnes didn't ask for the shield. He didn't chase it. He inherited it in pieces, of guilt, of history, of war, and put them back together not because he wanted to be Captain America, but because someone had to be. And in the end, that's what made him worthy. Not the serum, not the missions, not the victories, but the quiet promise to keep going, to stand when everything else falls, to carry the shield, even when it breaks you. Subscribe for more what-if cases in the Marvel world. I promise the next one who will blow up your mind.